fire rescue, EMS, law enforcement. These are the three components of public safety, and those who answer the call are the first responders. Welcome to another episode of 5 Alarm Task Force with your host, Steve Green. 5 Alarm Task Force presents some of the best instructors, leaders, and mentors in public safety today to educate, elucidate, and entertain. No topic is out of bounds, and every opinion has value. 5 Alarm Task Force is brought to you by 5 Alarm Task Force Corp. One family, one mission. First responders helping each other. And our sponsors, Insight Training LLC, your best bet for fire service TIC training. And by the Firehouse Tribune, where you can expand your horizons in emergency services and learn to work hard, stay safe, and live inspired. And our promotional partners, Chief Miller Products and Sites, LifeScan Wellness Centers, saving the lives of America's heroes, Nestor Bars, the amazing new hand tool for the fire service, EFT Corporation, 40 plus years of innovation in donation and payment processing solutions, 911lifestyle.com, First Responder Burnout Prevention and Improved Health, the Firefighter Cancer Foundation, fighting to extinguish firefighter cancer since 2004, the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, the Albemarle Sweet Shop, the North Florida Fire Expo, and the Great Florida Fire School. Remember, our ultimate goal is for you to be safe and return home after every call. So insert those headphones or turn up those speakers. The 5 Alarm Task Force is being dispatched right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. I'm Steve Green, your host. Happy to be with you and happy to have you with us. And my guest today is someone that I met on Twitter, got to be at least 2 or 3 years ago. We've chatted back and forth both on the stream and in DMs, and we finally were able to come up with a schedule for me to invite Chief Paul V. Giacomo with us. If you ever follow him on Twitter, and if you don't, you're missing almost an education that you could get for free. But I've never read a tweet from you, Chief, that, before I read the intro, that did not have meat on the bones. You don't just tweet, oh, well, yeah, I saw that. That was a dumbass move. No, you teach with every tweet that you provide to all of us following you. Paul Giacomo is a veteran of over 37 years in the fire service, formerly with FDNY and a former chief of the Somers, New York Fire District. He currently serves with the Westchester County Department of Emergency Services. He is the coordinator of the Westchester Putnam Peer Support Team, an instructor and faculty member of the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, and a member of the North Carolina Law Enforcement Assistance Program's peer team. And many of you know, who listen to the show regularly, that Greensboro in North Carolina, very dear to me. We spent 4 years there, and that's where I began my volunteer career in the fire service and medically. With 27 years of crisis intervention and peer support experience, he has worked with hundreds of agencies throughout North America during and after high-impact events. The chief teaches a multitude of CISM, peer support, and LODD-related courses, has been an FDIC instructor since 2017, and you'll see him at the forthcoming FDIC as well, and is a nationally certified fire service instructor. He regularly trains and helps build peer support teams and networks. The subject of Bernard Wolf's groundbreaking book, Don't Feel Sorry for Paul, and profiled in the book American Firefighter. He was recently recognized by the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation for Excellence in Crisis Intervention. Chief, it is an honor and privilege to welcome you to 5 Alarm Task Force.
The honor is all mine, brother. Thank you.
So when a couple of years ago, when I was asked to teach for the first time in 30 years to a crowd, and for the first time ever to a fire department crowd at the Great Florida Fire School, my friend who you may know, Joe DeVito, Captain Joe DeVito from Fort Myers Fire Protection District, said to me, Steve, you've been a lifelong teacher. He says, you can teach something. And I said, well, I haven't been in the fire service for 30 plus years. He goes, you're passionate about something. And my passion is firefighter health, wellness, fitness for duty, and both the cancer and the behavioral health initiatives. And so I created a course. I was trying to think of a name for it that wouldn't be, Behavioral Health 101 or something like that. And I came up with the elephant in the firehouse. When ego gets in the way of passion.
Yep.
Well, this morning, here we are recording on Monday, the 28th, and we have an elephant in the fire service in front of us right now, folks. If you're in the fire service, you're in emergency services, public safety at all, you know what's going on down here in the Miami-Dade County. The city of Surfside, just about 45 minutes from my home. It is right next to the area where my late in-laws used to come when they come down to South Florida for a while to visit. They would stay just down the street from these little motels just down the street from the Champlain Towers. And it has ripped the heart out of me, because even if I had been in better health, I would have probably gone down there to see if I could help with logistics. I'm a computer person, spreadsheets. I know I can't do anything physical. And the same thing happened in 9/11. I jumped, first thing I did is got ready to get with a couple of people and see if we could drive up to 9/11. And they said, well, you can't do physical stuff there. I said, I can do logistics. I can work on computers. I can do paperwork, whatever they need, I can be there. Unfortunately, because of my back condition and my wife, I didn't get permission from the boss. So I went to the blood bank here. I gave blood and I said, listen, you guys better ramp up. We're going to be getting a lot of donors right now. Well, how do you, I said, believe me, I'm putting it out there. We're going to get them and I will be here to help you. Well, what do you know? I said, look, no, I'm not going to do any sticks. I'll do the screenings when they come in. I'll do the registration when they come in. But you're going to need 4 more techs to start doing the sticks. Are you sure? I said, believe me, they're going to be here. And that was at 1:30. By 3 o'clock, we had a line of 50 people waiting to give. And we went through Thursday morning. We were open. Well, I got there at 6:30. Most nights they're supposed to close at 8. We didn't get out before 10 o'clock. Unfortunately, we found out Thursday morning that we weren't going to be sending the blood up to New York. But the people in the bank were kind of disillusioned. I said, why? I said, look at all the people we're going to be able to help in South Florida now. Yes, we can't send that blood up there, but we have our community to support as well. And we know, you and I know, and you made a good point in a Twitter to former Chief Sean. He was a chief in Alaska, and his uncle's chief in one of the chiefs in Philadelphia who also loved the premise of our dramatic series. And as I said to him, all too often they set up somebody to speak to firefighters or law enforcement officers or EMS personnel who have never been on the job. You can't do that. If we're going to talk to somebody, look, it's bad enough in the firehouse that we only talk to certain people and not others sometimes. But if we need to talk about somebody from something that's coming from our heart, that's broken in our brain, that's fried and fogged over, it's got to be somebody who's going to understand what we're talking about. They've been in the trenches. There's one call. You may have heard this on the show before, but my buddy and I met him when he was 18. I was 25 in that volunteer firehouse when we were both being voted in North Carolina. We were the first 2 Jewish guys ever to apply to that firehouse in the Bible Belt. And he's still my best friend today, other than my wife. And he's up in Northern County. He's the chief pilot for one of the sheriff's office. And when we get together, there was this one call that we went on. It was just the driver and the 2 of us. There was an officer showed up, so he pulled one of us we had been there about 2.5 years already, and pulled one of us into the front seat. And he said, we're going, because the chief is on the phone screaming, I need an engine company. I need an engine company. It would have been a pickup truck, an old Chevy. Remember with the old Chevys, the gas cap was up right behind the driver's door?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, he had been drinking. He lost control of the car, turned over on his left side. The cap came off. The fuel came out. The thing exploded into fire.
Yep.
The chief said, you come right in. Don't hook to the hydrant. Just give me the tank water. We'll do a back lay if we have to, if anybody else shows up. And luckily right across, it was just up the street from the chief's house. And just up the street then was one of our day guys, one of the caretakers who worked 24 on, 48 off, and a driver there. So Rich and I got there, and I let Rich go to the captain's chair, and I said, look, you tell me what you want to do and we're going to do it. I said, I'll pull the nozzle if you want to pull the spaghetti. I don't care. I'll do it either way. He goes, good. You go on the nozzle. I'll pull the spaghetti. And Bruce was our driver, and we got it out. And the guy, when we got there, first getting ready to open up the bail, he was still screaming. And then he went silent. But we got the fire out as EMS pulled up. They had the JAWS at that time. We didn't have JAWS in all the departments, so EMS had it. And this is, like I said, 1979. So, hydraulics were very new at the time.
Yeah.
And we got him out, and he survived for 3 days in the burn center. And then unfortunately he passed. But when I got back, we did everything because of the adrenaline running. Okay. And we did it. And then we packed up the hose, went back to the firehouse, cleaned up the truck, and everything. And as soon as we were done, I was in the bunker room, puking my guts out, crying and stuff like that. I mean, I had worked with bereaved families already. It wasn't like I had not seen death, like death in my family, in my extended family. And so it wasn't the first time, but it was the first time I actually saw the suffering, and I had to play a role in trying to relieve that, and the smells and everything else. And so the driver saw me come out all red-eyed and still wearing my bunker pants, and he put his arm around me, and he was a friend too. And he said, "This call, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Suck it up." Those words don't mean anything anymore unless you're using a straw.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So with the fact that fate brought us to today together, and I wish it hadn't been because of this issue, but it wasn't because, it was just coincidence that this issue has occurred. Let's focus today on how important, here we are in a new century, already in the second decade of it. We're so far ahead. Of course, we still don't have flying cars like you and I expected when we were kids, but why CISM and behavioral health is so important today, not just for the men and women on the pile today in Miami, not just our wonderful people who gave their lives and are still suffering from sickness and are still doing whatever they can from after working the pile and working 9/11. Our friends from Oklahoma City who had their tragedy, and I got to interview over a year ago, firefighter, Lieutenant, I think it was Lieutenant Moore, who was in the picture carrying out the baby that was around the world. And we talked about the same, what it was like for him and the impact that had. And it's not just us, it's LAFD. It's a small fire department in Minnesota or Oklahoma or Kansas. It's Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Boston, Bangor, Maine. We all are firefighters with a dedicated task.
Yeah.
But we all see crap. We see the worst things in life that we would never ask anybody else to have a look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we do that, Chief?
One of the things that brought me into the fire service, one of the things that I've loved about the fire service is this whole premise of we take care of our own, unlike anybody else does. And I would never take anything away from anybody else. But accountants, mechanics, lawyers, teachers, they may get close with some of their coworkers, but they don't have the same bond that we do.
Right. At
the same time, they don't have the same divisions that we do. Whether it's career versus volunteer, whether it's a rural setting or urban setting, who's got newer equipment, who's got equipment that barely works on. I mean, it's some of it's friendly rivalry and some of it's not.
I would never call that company for mutual aid.
Oh God, they're horrible. But here's the thing, and somebody I had read recently, and it's absolutely true. And I think it may have been Gary Luke who put this out there that, overwhelmingly, and certainly the people that I've spoken to over the years, in fire service, law enforcement, EMS, military, when you ask them why they do what they do, they say, well, I want to help people. And the chief said recently, you can't say that you want to help people, but they complain they had to get up twice throughout the night to go run a call, or that it's inconvenient because the game is on, or you just whatever it may be. To me, it's pretty simple. You go back and I'm a simple person, so I like simple things. it comes down to a riddle. What do Winnie the Pooh and Billy the Kid have in common? Two huge names for many of our childhoods, many of our histories. One real, one fictitious, both fairly storied in their own ways. But what do these two very opposite characters have in common? Winnie the Pooh and Billy the Kid. Same middle name. And if you can find one piece of commonality, one thing that puts us with somebody else, yeah, we can disagree on what kind of equipment or what kind of training we have, but if you can look at that piece of commonality, that's where we begin our dialogue. And that dialogue should go back to the simple part of, I want to help people. So you have that very deep-rooted passion of helping people. And we do. We train. I don't care if it's career volunteer. I don't care if it's, more medical-based or fire-based or whatever it may be. We set out to help people. And we're surrounded by people who are there to help people. But we forget about them sometimes. We can't see the forest through the trees.
Right.
We can't see the people around us that are suffering at times, personally or professionally, or by the way, both, because we're looking for people who are suffering. It doesn't work. So, I remember when I was 4 years old having surgery at New York University, NYU Medical Center on 34th and 1st in Manhattan, and looking out the window of my hospital room, 4 years old, watching a fire truck go up First Avenue and saying, that's what I want to do. They're going to help somebody. I knew nothing about it at the time. My goodness, at 4 years old, it was just cool. It was right. It was the red rigs, and which they should be red, by the way. But
Agreed.
And that's right. So isn't that it? It's, do we do, lime green? Do we do yellow? Do we do white? Do we do smooth bore versus adjustable? You know what? It doesn't matter as long as you want to help people. But, that's what I wanted to do. And now that I've gotten into this for 37 years, into this journey, I see that the people who want to help people maybe get a little misaligned at times.
Mm-hmm.
We would have called to somebody's house, offer not only our professional opinion, but sometimes our personal opinions. Hey, you probably should think about doing A or B, or you really need to go to the hospital, or hey, by the way, you probably shouldn't run that extension cord with 17 things plugged into it, right? It's not safe. But how many things do we do that aren't really all that safe? Safe for our physical or mental or emotional health, our personal lives as well as our professional lives. I mean, the reality is 30 years ago, you probably wouldn't be having this conversation, and I don't care what you call it. CISM, peer support, behavioral health, emotional first aid. I don't care. It's all the same stuff.
Right.
So let's forget about the posturing of whether we're represented by a union, a guild, a benevolent, whether we belong to a big agency, a small agency, a busy agency, a quiet agency. It does not matter. Let's focus on helping other folks. Let's focus on helping the people who do what we do, and really buckle down and do that work. For a long time, the talk has been that work is work and home is home. The two shall not cross, right? When somebody figures out how to do that, let me know, please, because it doesn't work. Work absolutely goes home with you, and home goes to work with you. Now, I don't care if work is you're getting a paycheck or it's your volunteer station, your EMS squad. It doesn't matter. When we go off to do the thing that we do to try to help people, everything that else is in our lives goes with us. You get home from that bad call. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, I get home from the bad call. I take off my boots at the door. That way I leave the junk out there. Okay. But by the way, you still have some of that junk on your pant leg.
Right.
Don't tell me you shed it all outside. Don't tell me you shed it all at the firehouse, So it's important, and it's important. You hate to say it's more important than ever, but it is. Because times have changed.
Exactly.
Times have changed.
We had the we have the concept of that we're going to be doing a webinar at the end of August on the PFOS, PFAS, but we're doing it on a positive, forward-looking thing. We're done beating up the manufacturers and stuff like that. We can't do anything about that right now. We have legal people to do that. We have to say, as a fire service, not just here, but our brothers in Canada and all internationally, how do we move ahead together as the fire service? And we have, great presenters there. But I think one of the, as you mentioned, part of the problem is when we look at, my dad taught me, when I got to university, I had to take an anthropology class my freshman year. I lived close to home. I lived at the college, but it was close to home. It was out in Greater Boston. And I got a C+ in this paper. And I had really worked hard. We didn't, computers were not available for working in. You had to go to the library. You had to type up your papers and stuff like that. And this is 1970. And I called him. I had been an A student in high school, graduated with a 99 because our report cards couldn't give 100. But I had a 99.
I never had that problem.
Yeah. And he said, "Did you really work hard? Did you do your due diligence? Did you really work on it?" I said, "Yes, Pop. I really did. I really worked hard on this. I got 2 notebooks full of notations I wrote down stuff from books and encyclopedias I did the research on." He says, "All right, now, can you look in the mirror and say you did everything you had to do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "The guy in the mirror never lies. The guy in the mirror or that girl in the mirror knows every secret that you have. Ask the guy in the mirror if you really did your best. If he says yes, then in that class, you were C+. But remember, Bud, because that's my nickname is Buddy in the family, he says, you're not with the kids in your high school. You're with kids from all over the United States and outside of the country in that class. Some of them may be really, brainiacs and really, that doesn't mean you're a bad kid or a bad student. It just means that in that topic, and that's not even, you had to take it because it was one of the gut classes. So it's not even going to be a part of your major. So you got the C+. Don't worry about it. But I think that what that reflects to me on today is that as you start talking about the jobs we do, health-wise, we know how important vitamin B is for us, the various vitamin Bs, but there's a vitamin B that's lethal for us, and that's bravado. It's one thing to be dedicated to helping people. It's another, as I teach in my class, bravado, because bravado gets in the way of your thinking, your rational, trained thinking. Oh, you know what? I'll just jump in that ditch. I don't have to wait for them to shore it up. I'll jump in. Boom.
But bravado goes further also, because it's not just taking there's a fine line, isn't there, between taking the unnecessary physical risk,
right,
and being the hero of the day.
Yes,
right. That's the bravado stuff. The bravado stuff is also running the bad call or going through the tough time. Sometimes it's not just a call. Sometimes it's many things, and sometimes it's work, sometimes it's home. And saying, well, I'm the rescuer. I'm the strong one. I don't want to show. How long do you push a spring down before eventually it comes up? So our bravado not only gets in the way, but our bravado damages us because we say, okay, let me suppress it. Yes, this was a bad call, but I'm the strong one. I'm the rescuer. I have to put it aside. It's kind of like that junk drawer that we all have, right? So you guys get Chinese food, right? And you've got the little packets left over. Now, you may need those packets someday, so you want to keep them, but I'm not sure where to put them. So you have the junk drawer. We all have it. Sometimes it's in the dining room.
3 pairs of chopsticks in there.
Yeah, so you put the chopsticks in there. You put some little packets in there. Now Valentine's Day, right? You want to do the right thing for the missus. So you get some beautiful candles. Now your candelabra holds 3 candles, but candles are sold in 2, so you have 4 candles. And what do you do with the spare candle? Well, you put it in the junk drawer. And the same as your shoelaces don't break at the same time, right? So you only need one right now. So what do you do with the other? It goes in the junk drawer. Now, eventually, that junk drawer just becomes packed with stuff. And it gets to the point where either you can't open it,
right,
or you can't close it.
I didn't even see you in my house. That's amazing. But in and out so quick.
Funny, I've got it here too, right? Well, we all have junk drawer in our minds. Stuff that we're not quite sure what to do with, right? So yeah, it was a bad call, or I've got some tough stuff going on. Maybe it's relationship, maybe it's financial stuff, maybe it's stuff with the kids, whatever it may be. Not quite sure what to do with it. But by the way, I'm on duty tonight, so you know what? Let me just kind of put it off. Let me put it off in my junk drawer. And then, by the way, the car is, man, I don't know if it's going to get back and forth from work a whole lot more. So, but I can't worry about that right now because I've got many other things going on. And let me kind of put that off in my junk drawer, even though the stress that goes with that is going to be in there as well. Well, if you don't clean out that junk drawer once in a while, if you don't organize that once in a while, that's when you're going to have a problem, either not being able to open or close that junk drawer, right? So that's what we have. And a lot of that comes from the bravado. Not quite sure what to do with that, but boy, I can't let it show now. So let me put it in that junk drawer.
And
Everybody's got the junk drawer.
What happens when that junk drawer is way overfilled?
Well, and that's the problem is we consciously, right? Consciously, we say, okay, I'm going to keep that junk drawer closed while I'm at work, while I'm at my kids' ballet class, while I'm at, soccer practice with the kids, whatever it may be. But there are times when we don't have control of that. I'll tell you where it comes from. A lot of times it comes from the calls I get at 3 or 4 in the morning from a firefighter, from a dispatcher, from a police officer who says, I don't know what's going on, but here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. And I'm not sure what to do with it. Because when we start to relax, we don't really have control over our junk drawer opening or closing. And certainly when we're sleeping. That's why our folks get freaked out when they're having dreams that maybe aren't so good. They're having flashbacks, nightmares, whatever we want to call them, because we don't have control of that. We can't hold that junk drawer closed when we're sleeping. So of course it makes sense we're going to have some yucky stuff that happens, right? So the bravado and not saying to another, hey, can you talk for a minute? That hurts us. And quite honestly, it doesn't just hurt us, but it kills us, So, you said as you were kind of setting things up that what's going on right now in Florida, which is absolutely horrible, which characteristically, the visualizations and certainly the smells and the atmosphere are very, very much like we had here in New York after September 11th. Sure. Like we had, as I mentioned, I worked providing peer support on scene in Worcester in December '99. The Oklahoma City bombing, the dynamics were there as well. So we know those things are happening. That's the elephant in the room, right? But you said, these things have ripped the heart out of me. And I do have to step in there for a second and say, they didn't rip the heart out of you. Because you're here now with your heart.
Right.
It squeezed it. It's hurt. I've had people who've said over the years doing this, I'm broken. You're not broken. You're here right now. Maybe your armor is dented up a little bit, and it hurts. Absolutely, man. It hurts horribly. But if we surround ourselves with people, and if we allow people to surround us sometimes who give a damn and let them in a little bit, that's when maybe we can patch up our armor. Mm-hmm. That's when we kind of release that squeeze on our heart. It is a different fire service, right? So when I first started, I joined my first volunteer company the night after my 17th birthday. I have no training. I have nothing. It's just, kind of show up and get dressed and you'll kind of learn as you go. And about 4 weeks in, maybe 4 or 6 weeks into it, we had a motor vehicle accident. It was a rollover. It's actually, I talk about this in the American Firefighter book, that the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation put out, that we had an auto accident with a decapitation. And the crews were operating the extrication equipment on the door, trying to get this person out. And, what do you do with the new kid? Right? Here, kid, stand at the door. Watch how we do it. And at 17 and 2 months, they pop the door. Here's a body and here's a head not attached. I don't know what to do with that. That's a horrible event. I had never seen anything like that. But I know what I'm not going to do as a young firefighter. Who, quite honestly, for me, who had probably a little more to prove than most others, I'm not going to go to another firefighter or company officer and say, hey, by the way, I'm kind of messed up over that. So what do I do with it? I put it in my junk drawer.
Yep.
And the problem is I hadn't been taught good positive coping skills because back then in '83, you didn't do that. The skills, unfortunately, that I knew, which maybe weren't good and positive, were using the bottle. And that's where I lived for 10 years. So when I had the bad events, when I had the bad calls, the 7-year-old who choked to death on an amusement park ride on her gum, that I couldn't help as far as sustaining life, and we'll talk about that more. I didn't know what to do with that, even though she looked exactly like my niece. The same eyes, the same hair, thousands of people in this amusement park looking at me because I was the EMT working her. And I couldn't do what I was trained to do. I didn't know what to do with that. So not only do I put some of that in my junk drawer, but I hit the bottle. Now, the problem is when you come to hours later or a day or two later, the kid's still dead and you're in no better place.
Right.
So, where we've come with peer support over the years, it's not just the event, right? The event, we understand what's going on in Florida right now. It's a horrible event, but we understand that where we sit back and say, that may well leave a mark. Okay. What we don't understand is that there are people at home. We don't recognize that there are people at home whose loved ones are crawling that pile now.
Right.
And all they know is my loved one is at work. My loved one is in a very dangerous place. Now, by the way, too, could some of the health concerns long-term that we've had here after the Pentagon, after September 11th here in New York, could those come forward in South Florida, somewhere down the road? They may well.
They may. I will say, though, this time I did see, again, I'm a news hound anyway, before I was a firefighter. But I think those of us who have served or currently serve, no matter where we are in this country, have focused on this. But I'm glad to say that I've seen a number of them on the pile, especially in the first, maybe 36 hours, 48 hours, wearing respirators.
Yes.
From the get-go, because there was still a lot of dust and a lot of smoke from these incipient fires that occurred, below the crush zone.
And again, I'm not involved in the operation, so I don't know all the dynamics. And maybe we're just seeing the sound bites and video feeds where it happens to be that those persons are on the respirators. I don't know. My hope is, and what I believe, because everything I'm seeing, they're wearing some kind of protection. Why? Because 20 years ago, even though we knew there would be an issue, even though folks said, hey, really good idea if you do, it wasn't done. You weren't wearing that protection. So what happens is, right, what we learn, we learn that what we're doing can harm us. Is that any different from our peer support, our psychological first aid, right? There could be physical health risks. That's how we learn. Listen, these reflective vests that we all love to hate, right? Anytime you're off the rig, you have to have your vest on. Well, if you look at firefighter line of duty deaths, and that's one of the things that I do, and I study these, unfortunately, because that's, kind of my area of interest, so to speak, having gone through these. When you look at firefighter line of duty deaths, the reality is they're way down compared to 10 and 15 years ago.
Yes.
Back in the day, we didn't wear SCBA for overhaul. My goodness, absolutely not. And you didn't go on air until you absolutely had to,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Well, now we go on air early. We stay on air. We're on air through the overhaul process, and until we're clear of that building, we're wearing our vests. All of these things, we're using protective gowns and gear, and maybe those things that we think are a pain in the tail are some of the factors that are contributing to the lessening of firefighter duty deaths, as well as the initiatives from National Fallen Firefighters from the IAFF, from many others. They're doing incredible work for saying, let's be smart. We just had a stand down for safety for rehab. Exactly. We all hate rehab. Right? Most of us, it's a 2-bottle world. Once you finish your second bottle, you have to go to rehab. So when somebody asks you, how many bottles? Oh, just one. Right? Still my first, 5 hours into an event, you're still on your first bottle. Well done, because we don't want to go. We don't want to get labeled. We don't want to get taken out of the game. Well, let me tell you, I'd rather be taken out of the game now for a little while, or maybe even for today, but still be in the game in 5 or 10 years.
Sure.
What we do has an impact on us. What we do has an impact on our families, and we have to understand that. And so, in a firehouse setting, the old timer, right? When I first started, the old timer was anybody with 20 years or more. They were antiques. They were dinosaurs, says the guy with 37 plus years. The old timer would grab the new person by the back of the neck and say, hey, here's how it's done. Make a left, don't make a right. You know, here's how you pump a rig. Here's how you advance a line. Here's how you, whatever it may be. And it wasn't just the firefighting or the EMS work. It was, you come in, the first thing you do is you make a pot of coffee and you grab a mop. Don't care how clean the floors are, you clean them again. You know, here's how you make a bed. Here's how you take pride in your state, right? Pride and ownership, right? Now we're talking, you know, Rick Lasky and Dennis Rubin stuff. It's all about leadership, right? Leadership doesn't necessarily mean a rank.
Chief Gary.
Leadership says, here's how it's done, because here's how it was given to us. So why are we not doing that more? I think we're making a lot of progress, but why are we not doing that more with our well-being, not just physical well-being, but our characteristic, our values, our emotional, mental, whatever you want to call it. Why are we not grabbing the person by the back of the neck who maybe noticeably in the past year or so has put on a good amount of weight? And we're saying, listen, you know, this may not be the healthiest thing for you. Well, it's none of your business. Well, it is my business when you drop on the second floor of a walk-up, you know, when you get down on the fire ground. Because now, not only is the operation compromised, but now we're going to be the ones taking care of you. You know, hey, you know, yeah, it may not be my business, but I'm kind of hearing some stuff that you're doing when you're not here at the firehouse. And it may not be some of the best choices. Say it's not my business, that's fine, but it's going to be my business when something happens, right? When personal life becomes really, really bad. We hear this all the time, don't we? Somebody in public safety takes their life, and folks say, I didn't know. They came to the firehouse every day, they did their job, they were rock solid, but they were falling apart on the outside. Home is not home, work is not work. The two are absolutely enmeshed. Our families are along with this. You know, when I went through the loss of my lieutenant, June 22nd, 97, you know, my wife at the time, she went through that with me. She was a part of it, because from that point on, anytime I was not at home at a fire, that danger was there. We'd never talked about that before, but that danger was there, you know, and so it becomes a different level. You know, my kids are a part of this. All of our families are a part of this. We have to recognize that. That's the elephant in the room, not just the event, the big event, but the other events that are going on every day, the other situations. You know, we're doing a whole lot better than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But we're not doing as good as we need to do. And no matter how good we ever do, it won't be good enough, because we have to strive for better. Just as, when do you stop training? When do you stop learning? The day in the fire service that you stop training and stop learning is the day you probably need to leave. Whether it's career, volunteer, it doesn't matter. When you think you know it all, I mean, listen, I get to interact with some amazing people, yourself and some of the big names in the fire service and at FDIC and other conferences. And the people that I consider the true leaders, my mentors, are the ones who will say, never stop learning. People with 30 and 40, and I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to have somebody come through my class, 50 years in the fire service, a legend coming through my class. Man, I'm nobody to be in front of you. You're the legend. And he said, I'm here to learn from you. You know, I mean, no pressure, by the way, right? But here's somebody with that amount of time, still wanting to learn, still wanting to do better. And that's what I think we need to do. And so, you know, as far as taking care of our own, it can't just be words. You got to take the action. You know, well, so-and-so, yeah, boy, he was getting chubby. Well, so-and-so was getting fat. Well, so-and-so had a heart attack. Did you do anything about it? You know, well, so-and-so's been going through a tough time at home. And, well, I know he, you know, he or she was carrying on the side or doing whatever they're doing. Maybe it's drinking, maybe it's carousing out or whatever. Well, maybe none of your business, but did you ever tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. You know, I'm kind of worried about you. You know, I can't tell you how many times over the past 27 years that I've been doing peer support. I can't tell you how many times that I've had to ask firefighters, police officers, EMTs, the direct question, you know, are you thinking of harming yourself? I did it 2 nights ago in a conversation I had with somebody. Are you thinking of harming yourself right now? What is your plan? Because if so, then we're going to the emergency room. I'll go with you. We have to take that tough action. Times have changed. We can't turn a blind eye to it anymore. So again, I don't care what you call it, peer support, CISM, whatever, it's fine, man. And I don't care what model. We've got some of that, right? So the red rigs versus the lime green versus the white rigs, the smooth bore versus the straight tip, critical incident stress management, peer support, behavioral health, psychological first aid. Now call it whatever you want. Let's help people. But the other problem we have is that one of the things we do in peer support is called cognitive reframing reevaluation. Trying to get somebody to look at something from a different perspective. And one of the things that I hear many, many, many times a year, individuals, groups, is that the event was difficult, was hurtful, because I wanted to help them and I couldn't do anything for them. The case with the person who burned in the overturned Chevy pickup. We're rescuers. We go to help that person. Helping somebody does not necessarily equate to sustaining life.
Right.
In our minds, it does.
Yeah.
Well, they burnt to death
Especially
while I tried to get to them and I couldn't help them. No, it doesn't mean you didn't help them. It means you couldn't help sustaining life. But if you were with that person when they took their last breath on this earth, then they died with somebody who cares, somebody who gives a damn. That goes for a whole long way. That family may well learn that crew, fire, EMS, law enforcement, whatever, was there and did everything within their powers at that time to help. That's comforting.
Sure. You mentioned the F word. And no, folks, I don't use the other F word on this show, on our shows. I know we're not as salty as some of the other podcasts, but I know that we have some buffs who listen to it, and I want to make sure that it's appropriate for them.
Yeah.
But the word family, with our new nonprofit going since last October, why we opened it up in the middle of the pandemic, we were crazy, but we did it. And thank God we've been able to send out nearly $2,000 worth of financial assistance to 2 small volunteer departments that were destroyed in accidents, and families of brothers and sisters who we've lost. And sometimes we use that word family in a jocular manner. Most of the time we don't. Most of the time we talk about we are a family. But if we are a family, well, if your little brother, you see him doing stuff that's going to get him in trouble or hurt him, I don't care if you're a brother or your sister, but that you see that younger sibling of yours doing things that's not right, you make an effort. Usually, in most families, you'll make an effort to take them aside or talk with them and say, "Oh, Billy, why are you doing that? Why would you do something like that? You could really get hurt, honey. I don't want you to do that. Please, just be careful." Oh, well, you know what? I see what you're trying to do. Maybe we can work together and we can help you do it, but in a little safer manner. So you're not going to do it. We use the word family when it's convenient, and we don't like the word family when it's in our face. Yeah. But we have to remember, if we are a family and we want to use the terms brothers and sisters in red or in blue or in green, and we want to help each other, well, for God's sake, it's got to be anytime we need to help each other. It can't be just the good times, and you can't be afraid to reach out to someone that you're calling a family member, a brother, that you would willingly give your life up for in an emergency situation. If you see they're having a problem, or there's incorrect behavior, or they've changed, their whole demeanor has changed.
Yeah.
Because if we don't live up to that word family, then it becomes meaningless for the entire organization of the fire service.
Well, you either talk the talk or you walk the walk, but you can't do both. Talking is cheap. Walk it. Tap that person on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I know you had a tough call yesterday.
Right?
Can I do anything for you?" So within peer support, I'm a CISM purist. Right? The way I came into this many years ago is the way I still believe. peer support, CISM, and the essence of peer support. It should be peers. It should be peer driven. It should be peer led. It's a grassroots program. So one of the great things about, the peer support and CISM that I'm involved in is it's peer based, but done with mental health, done with pastoral care providers, chaplains. They're part of it. They're supplemented, but the peers are the ones that drive it. So when it comes time for our group processes, our debriefings, our diffusings, it's the peers who lead that. Okay. Also with it as a grassroots program, I am not the one to show up when not invited. We hear that all the time. Hey, agency A had a bad call. You need to go. If they want us and need us, they'll call us. Now, by the way, if they don't know about us, that's shame on us. As a peer support team, we need to be doing outreach or in-service training. Whether it's 30 minutes on drill night or a 3-hour block or 4-hour block. Chief Rubin had me come down when he was in Petersburg and in all of his duty groups, as far as a stress, PTSD awareness, resource identification. We need to be doing that with the seasoned people and the recruits, the newer people. So they need to know about us. They need to know when to call us, when to think about calling us, the signs and symptoms of stress, what it looks like, talks like, smells like, how to get in touch with us, But we're not doing as good a job as we should. We're doing better than we were. But while we don't just show up on the doorstep, that doesn't prohibit us from knowing that Steve went through a bad event, his crew went through a bad event, and I know Steve, so I pick up the phone and say, hey man, I know you went through A or B, checking on you, how are you doing? If you need anything, let me know. I think there's a big difference there. There's a big difference in saying, hey, you must need us, and saying, hey, I'm worried about you. Because if we really want to talk about this brotherhood and sisterhood of ours, then we have to walk that walk. We have to say, hey, I'm worried about you. And, listen, I have met firefighters that maybe I wasn't best friends with, right? Maybe I don't agree with some of their values or how they conduct themselves, but make no mistake, they're still family, and I would certainly lay my life down for other people because that's what we do.
Right.
But I would also stay up till 3 a.m. on the phone or at a diner somewhere with a cup of coffee talking with somebody who's going through a tough time. But we have to be able to reach out. So again, you would not advance a hose line all by yourself.
Right.
So why do we think we have to do this alone? It's like, in the firehouse, somebody has a knee injury. Now, in the firehouse, we solve everything, right? Career volunteer, we have all the answers. So we can say, hey, Steve, sorry, your knee hurts. Hey, do try some ibuprofen or put some ice on it. And somebody else will say, well, take some whatever else or put some heat on it. But if after a day or two, it's really getting to be where it's inhibiting what you should be doing, nobody would fault you if you said, hey, I made an appointment to go see a doc about my knee. But yet we get hurt in here or up here. How is it any different? It shouldn't be. We can coach somebody along and say, hey, the basic peer support stuff. Hey, you know what? For the next day or two after the event, stay away from the caffeine stuff, stay away from the high fat, greasy stuff. The better care you can take of yourself for the next 2 or 3 days, good chance the better off you're going to be long. But if in 3 or 4 or 5 days you're not in a better place, then maybe you need to go to a different level of care. I'm not saying you need to go into a hospital, but maybe you talk to a different peer, or maybe you talk to one of our mental health providers, chaplains. We wouldn't fault the person for going to get looked at or get some help for their knee or back injury. We got to stop breaking the chops of the folks who are getting help for what's going on inside. We have to end that stigma. I'm an open book. I mean, literally, I'm an open book. And, I'm somebody who lives with PTSD. I'm somebody who has been sober, but for the grace of God, 31 years. Somebody who's been through the horrible events. And I don't say that to brag by any stretch. I mean, quite honestly, I wish I could tell you that I didn't have those things. But I've learned that I can't help others if they don't know about them. Our team can't help others if they don't know about us. this incredible peer support process. Now, I know Miami-Dade Fire Rescue has an incredible peer support team, well-trained, well-seasoned, well-established. Florida has hundreds and hundreds of amazing peer support providers, mental health providers, chaplains. But if nobody's using them, if nobody is saying, we need help, please come in and help us, then we're just treating that bad knee on our own. That bad knee is only going to get worse. You know, for some people, it may go away, it may be fine. Home run, home run. But in peer support, in the simplest sense of peer support, we've got to be doing a better job. And it's funny because peer support, there are still people. I mean, I think we're making progress every day because some of the older mindsets are kind of riding off into the sunset. But there are still those that say, oh, we don't do that. I don't believe in that. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen, right? Suck it up, as you were told. I had a chief officer who I was doing some training here in the county years ago. And as the email went out to all the training officers, we're going to be doing this peer support training. This chief officer hit reply all and said, don't participate in this training. That inherently stress is a part of our jobs. And if you can't handle it, you shouldn't be doing the job. But this is the same person who not only advocated, but was directly involved in a cancer support network. That's peer support. You watch TV when you go home tonight, and over the course of 2 or 3 hours in front of the tube, how many advertisements do you see for some sort of peer support program? The smoking cessation clinics, the weight loss programs, etc. Where they say, well, a weight loss counselor will be helping you with, that's peer support.
Right.
But somehow we just think that we are supposed to fix it all on our own.
Right. Go through life on our own path, nobody else other than immediate family.
Yeah,
Right.
Because we become the rescuers. We become, yes, we are plumbers, electricians, carpenters, social workers, you name it, we are it. We have to fix everything. Except ourselves sometimes.
Exactly. Well, let's take a break here. And when we come back with our guest, Chief Paul Giacomo, we're going to talk a little bit more definitively about CISM, how to bring it in, what their tasks are with you when they sit with you or they sit with your organization. And we want to try to impress upon you, our viewers and listeners, how important this is today, even more so because from when the chief, I got in a little bit before the chief was almost out when he started. Yet in my 8 years, I saw basically everything that you could see in the fire service other than a massive collapse. That was the only thing I didn't. And here I am 40 plus years later, still remember about a half a dozen of those calls. And my buddy and I, whenever we're together, those are probably the 5 or 6 calls we talk about because we were on them together. And luckily, his wife was a nurse. And so for him, it was, they met much later, but the wife he married and he's moved into law enforcement and Aero division, but she's seen it. She was a hospice nurse. So, and when we were together as a couple, because I was the one who was actually performed their wedding, performed the ceremony. I was lucky enough to do that and privileged. And she was, yes, I could talk to my wife about anything, but his wife understood where I was coming from. She felt where I was coming from because she had the experience both with her husband, my best friend, and her own experience in hospice care. And for me, it was like a burden off of me that she would sit in on sometimes when he and I would chat, just sitting in the living room and hey, do you remember that call? And she was there and she'd listen to us and she says, guys, listening to every time you talk about this call, you guys go through the playbook A through L that everything you did according to Hoyle. You have nothing to feel bad about. You did everything you possibly could for those people. And that's what you should look at, how hard you worked.
And so this hospice nurse who maybe operationally did things differently than what you do in the fire service is Winnie the Pooh and you're Billy the Kid, and you share the same middle name. That's that commonality, right? I'm a firefighter, but yet, as I said in the intro, I'm with the peer team for North Carolina Law Enforcement Assistance. About half of the work that I do, and not just the teaching, because the teaching is the easy part, but the PTSD work I do, the peer support work that I do, about half of that, if not more, is with law enforcement. I'm not in law enforcement,
No.
but they've accepted me enough, and I don't know if I have the presence or whatever it may be, that I have that same middle name. You know, you don't have to wear the same uniform to be able to help somebody.
Right.
But the thing that makes us work is that peer aspect, you know, and it's, you know, it's a gift. It's an honor to be able to do it. You talk about helping people. Yes, you may help somebody by fixing their car. That's huge because they can get to work. Absolutely. And you may help somebody by preparing their taxes. It could go either way. But when you talk about helping somebody, peer support, and not just being a peer support provider, being somebody in a firehouse, in an EMS squad, in a dispatch center, in a hospital setting, in a military unit, who tap somebody else on the shoulder and say, hey, this is tough, but I got your back. And through conversation, that person somewhere down the road is in a better place. Man, you don't hang that on a wall.
Right.
You know, you don't put that in the bank account. But
And
I'll tell you what,
in the mesh drawer either.
yeah, no. In fact, you help them clean it out. So you want to take a break?
Yeah,
And
we'll take a
absolutely.
quick break. All right, folks, we'll be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. And welcome back to this episode of 5 Alarm Task Force with my very special guest today, Chief Paul Giacomo. And we are talking in depth, or trying to be a little bit more in depth, about the concept of peer support, CISM. And yes, on our podcast, we've had we've had Mark Lamplug, and we've had others who've been on here. We've talked about behavioral health issues in the fire service. But, you know, it's still, we're just digging through the top of the sand. It's been about 5 years now, and we're making some progress. But I don't believe, to my knowledge, and that could be limited because we don't see some of the, after a tragedy, we don't know what necessarily goes on in a department. But when you're in the family, every tragedy hurts us, whether you're active, retired, disabled, I mean, whatever the case is. Once you're in and you're in that family, when you read of a line of duty death or other type of line, you know, job related loss, it cuts us. And as I tell the people that I counsel in bereavement, that the loss is like a cut wound. You were cutting a bagel and you sliced, and it's it hurts like hell, and you had to get stitches, and it hurts for another week or 10 days. And then it doesn't hurt quite as much, but you see it, you look at it, you remember that you made that mistake with a knife, and then the stitches come out, and then it becomes a scab, and you see it, and you touch it a little bit, and you remember that, and then eventually becomes a scar. And it doesn't hurt as much physically, but when you look at it, it reminds you, but the pain is a little bit less. And sometimes you can finally say to a point, I was an idiot. Why didn't I use the bagel holder? It was right in the cabinet next to me. I should have used that. And that's what happens with loss. And I found, since I've been doing the podcast and taking such a strong position with our firefighter health, wellness, and really what pushed me into even doing the podcast with Joe and Andy and a couple of the other people, and Nick pushed me to do a podcast where how I was responding to tweets on social media about the importance of who we are as humans and people. We're not robotic firefighters. Yeah, there are talks of having robotic firefighters flying around in these airborne fire engines. We're not there yet. Yeah. So we're still humans, and we have hearts and we have minds, and those get affected. You might not show it outwardly. I do. I cry at the drop of a hat. Watching the first part of the tragedy in Surfside, my wife was comforting me because she saw the tears running down my eyes. But we can't keep it boxed up because, as you said in the first segment, the more we put in that junk drawer, the less room there is for anything else, and there's less chance we're able to open it again to even try to remove something else. So with that said, let's talk to our audience and our viewers about those definitions. How, with your development over the years and where you are today, what you see CISM in peer support and what you want to really address with those.
I mean, you look at the history of peer support. I mean, going back when CISM, as we know it and as I practice, and there are many, listen, nowadays there are many different titles and called different things, and that's fine. It started years ago as CISD, critical incident stress debriefing, right? And then it evolved about 25 years ago from CISD to CISM. So when I hear teams and I hear individuals saying, oh, we have a CISD team, first thing that goes off in my mind is you're probably not as current as you need to be because we haven't called it that for 25 years. But semantics, man, that's fine. CISM traditionally dealt with an event, right? It's the fatal car accident, it's the fatal fire, whatever it may be. I'm not minimizing those by any stretch, but you go into your CISM toolbox and maybe using your one-on-one skills, maybe you're doing a group process, a debriefing or diffusing, or maybe whatever it is, or referral mechanisms or pastoral care or family support. To me, bringing peer support out even more. When I train peer support teams around the country and when I develop these teams and networks, what I try to advocate is that the peer support team, whether it's in-house, whether it's a regional approach, which I'm a huge fan of, I prefer the regional approach, which is made up of maybe a number of smaller in-house teams. That team or that network needs to be reflective of the organization or organizations of which they're serving. Rank structure, civilian versus sworn. The chief of department probably is not going to run a debriefing full of folks who have a year or two or three on. You're not going to have that same. But chief of department is going to relate to another chief officer. The support staff are a part of it. The families are a part of it. I've been a huge advocate for a long time of including families as part of the peer support team, because we may know what it's like to be a firefighter, a medic, a dispatcher, and to provide that empathy, that compassion, that compassionate support, compassionate presence for those who do what we do. But what about our families? What about our spouses, etc.? So we need to be able to do that. And so this whole concept of peer support, and really before it became kind of the movement that it is now, talked about this for years, that you look within your organization. The crews ran a bad call yesterday. It was unusual. It was graphic. It was okay. So we say CISM may be appropriate. We probably have to do some one-on-ones if asked. We may do a group process. Maybe we provide some referrals. Maybe for families need some support. But you look at that same organization, and not just the high-impact event, which we all understand, but within that organization, is there somebody going through a particularly tough time away from work? Do you have somebody in the organization that's going through a particularly tough divorce, or that's struggling with an addiction, or financially? There's a place for peer support there, because I'm also willing to bet that somebody in that agency or somebody in a nearby jurisdiction has also gone through that tough divorce, has also gotten sober or gotten better, has entered recovery and done well, has gotten some financial assistance, financial planning, etc. That's peer support. And that goes back to our earlier conversation of home does not stay at home, work does not stay at work, right? And so how can we talk about providing peer support when we're only doing that for events that are happening at work? Those of us who have gone through divorces, it's a horrible time. It's a horrible time. The people that can relate to us, the people very often that can help us the most, are people who have been through it. And as a friend of mine told me when I was going through mine was, the only way past it is through it. I don't care if you go over it, around it, under it, you got to get through it somehow. you know? So that absolutely to me is peer support, even right down to including the things on TV, right? The smoking cessation, the diet weight loss. I mean, it just is an identification. It is sharing the same middle name, you know? So listen, I'm a faculty member and an instructor for the ICISF, the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. Are there many things out there? Absolutely. Again, there is the IFF has some incredible stuff in place. You've got the behavioral health initiative. You've got, wellness programs. I don't care what you call it. I don't get involved in the politics. The ICISF material works for me because that's what saved my life way back when. The ICISF providers saved my life. And so for me, it's the best fit. It's the broadest spectrum. It is after September 11th, where I was helping coordinate peer support resources coming into the Metro New York area for about 9 weeks, about 350 providers from as far away as Alaska. What made that work was they were all ICISF trained. They're all trained in the same model, the same method. So they all spoke the same language. That's the same as, here in my county on the border of New York City. Although September 11th was the only time it happened where we sent resources into the city, once every year or two or so, New York City resources come into our county. Well, one of the challenges is who is running New York Corporation Thread and who's running National Standard. Sometimes the two don't jive up.
Right.
So when you're providing peer support, especially in a larger environment for a larger event, having people who are trained in the same model, it's so important that they speak the same language.
Right.
But I have worked with people for big events that are trained in a different model, and very often it works. So I don't care what you call it. I don't care what model you're going to subscribe to. I do think it's important to have a standard of care, and that's why we have the training we have now, right? We have our national standards, which everybody's going over to national certifications for everything. The reality is, couldn't we, in the course of 4 or 5 weeks, teach somebody the basics of, how to fight fires, right? We can give you the crash course on, pump operations, friction loss. I mean, do the exact numbers matter? No, yeah, they do. But we can teach you how to pump a rig in an afternoon. We can teach you ladder company operations and, rapid intervention. But the standards are so important. The standardization, that's why, again, certainly here in New York, going over to national standards for most everything, national certifications is so important because we know that company, that person coming in, have that same level of training. With peer support, I think it's beneficial if we can do that as well. But again, we look at the, in 2017, the IAFF opened up the Center for Excellence. Tremendous, doing incredible work for IAFF members. We need 7 of those centers just for IAFF members.
Right.
We need 25 of those centers for non-IAFF members. We need 30 of those members for volunteers. I mean, the reality is we need about 7 of those in each state. It's a huge step. It is, again, they're doing tremendous work. But we need more. No matter how much we're doing, we need to do more. No matter how much in-service training, outreach training that we're doing, stress awareness training, we need to do more. Not only to help reduce some of the suicides, but also the effects. One of the questions when I teach my line of duty death class, and very often, a few line of duty death classes I teach, and very often I'll have rooms full of leadership, many chiefs, commissioners, captains, lieutenants, etc. One of the questions I'll ask, and I'll ask you, Steve, you think back on the years that you've been involved in this family. And I want you to think back on those years and assign a number to this. Think about the number of people that you know that have died in the line of duty. And then I want you to think back on the years that you've been involved in this and assign a number to this. I want you to think back on the years you've been involved and the number of people you know that have died because of the duty, because of the job. And the latter of those numbers is probably far larger than the first number. I've lost 35 friends in the line of duty. I can't even tally up the number of friends that I've lost because of the job, because of the heart disease that goes along with it, because of the cancers that go along with it, because of the substance abuse, alcoholism, etc., that may be a byproduct of what we're doing, that maybe could have been staved off by somebody tapping somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, you're a sister to me, you're a brother to me, and I'm kind of worried about you. What's going on?
Yeah, that's boy, when you asked that, there were only two, one in each. One was a firefighter in our one of the small departments, who passed away within 24 hours of a call. In his sleep, thank God. So, like you said, never woke up, so no suffering or anything like that. And the other one, was one of the was a Jewish captain with FDNY who I had met and spoken with, who was lost in 9/11, and I saw his vehicle on the news, and then I saw the name several days later. And yet, another impetus for me to create this podcast and why I got social media is every time I would get an issue of Firehouse, the first page I turned to was the line of duty deaths. And I would count how many total were listed,
yep,
and how many were health related. Yep. And I got angrier and angrier and angrier. I said, this can't be happening. We can't be losing 60 to 70% of a monthly roster of line of duty firefighters to preventable health issues. Now, not everyone, okay, it's not a blanket statement. I know there are health issues that we don't know about. I'm going through one right now. It's a malady. We don't know what it is, and it's frustrating, and it's not tearing us apart, my wife and my family, but mind-wise, it's tearing us apart. That I have these days where I suffer and nobody knows what it is. I've been through 6 doctors now. Nobody can answer the question. Okay. But I'm a good day today. So I thank God every day that I have a good day.
Yeah.
But I just think that when I saw these numbers, and I was discussing it on, Facebook and on Twitter, these guys were saying, do something about it, Steve. You've been in radio before when you were in college and television in high school. You can do something about this. Talk about it. Do a podcast. Now, problem is that I didn't know what a podcast was at the time. I hadn't worked in radio. Well, what happened was in 2001, I was introduced by an intermediary to a firefighter medic and the PIO for Boca Raton Fire. Frank Reggio, great guy, great firefighter, great PIO. And Frank was doing a radio show. He had been doing a radio show. So our mutual friend introduced us through the email, and I was invited to be on the show because they want to know about our TV show that we were doing for the original TV show we were doing, America's Heroes. And Frank and I hit it off. And it happened to be 2 weeks. It was the 3rd week of August. I was on the show of 2001. I'd gotten back from Israel, and they wanted to talk about how Israel wanted to produce our show there. And so Tuesday, 9/11 happens. And Thursday night, Frank, he did the show Sunday night, and he called me Thursday night, the 13th. He says, hey, are you available Sunday night? I said, what do you want to do? Go out? He goes, no. Can you come and do the show with me? It was from 5 to 7. It was recorded at a local AM station, but I think it was the manufacturer begins with a K. Oh God, I forget the names. But
Apparatus?
Yeah, apparatus manufacturer.
KME?
Maybe it's KME.
Okay.
Or
HME?
HME maybe.
Okay.
They had a router, a server up in Michigan, I think, wherever they were located, and they were putting it out on the internet. So we actually had worldwide broadcast, but it wasn't a podcast. It was a radio show that we recorded there. And he said, I can't do it alone this week, and Frank came from Long Island, and had lots of friends on the island and in the city at FDNY. And I said, yeah, buddy, I'll be happy to be there. Well, we went on for 5 years together, basically, doing that show. And it was something that we started talking about then too, was health issues. Why are so many of us dying from cardiac issues and stuff like that? Yep. And that just stayed with me, and we had to go our separate ways for family reasons and stuff like that. We're still good friends. He's been to a recording. He's helped me out when I got started. And that's what it was. I cared so much. I didn't know these people listed in the magazine. All I saw was, at that time, cause of death or heart attack or, brain hemorrhage. I said, wait a second. This person was 38 years old or 42 years old. Why are they dying from a medical issue? Where are we? Where are we as an organization that we're not taking care of this?
Yeah.
That led me to where we're sitting today.
Well, when I teach my line of duty death class, or one of my line of duty death classes, one of the first slides that I have are the statistics from the previous year. How many firefighters, police officers, EMS providers we've lost in the line of duty the previous year. And one of the questions that I'll ask the class is, what does this slide mean? What do these numbers mean? And, folks will fumble through, some questions or some guesses or answers. And I'll say the reality is the numbers mean nothing. The numbers mean nothing until you look at who people were, because our people are not numbers. You'll see on the bottom of whatever news media, you look at, you'll see, firefighter lost in overnight blaze in whatever town it was, or, Florida deputy shot and killed during whatever. For most of the public, that doesn't mean a whole lot. For us, and I don't care if it says sheriff's deputy and we come from fire service or vice versa, that's our family. And when we look at the roughly 150 police officers that die in the line of duty every year, give or take, 80 to 100 plus firefighters every year, between 10 and 20 or 25 EMS providers every year. Those are our family members. That's 300, 350-ish of our family members that left their family, whether it be it's 3 a.m. as a volunteer or going to the station, does not matter, who didn't go back home, who gave their lives trying to help other people and doing what we do. So again, the importance of walking the walk, not just talking the talk. When we say to our families, you're always going to be part of our family and we're here for you, that we have to follow through on it.
Yep.
So you look at behind me, my challenge coins, my tokens are my treasures. The helmets that I've been given, the badges, the honorary membership, whatever it may be. I've been blessed. I love my challenge coins. Challenge coins that I have behind me are not just pieces of metal. I do high impact events and line of duty deaths. I'm the death guy. Nobody wants to sit next to me on an airplane. Hey, what do you do? I do pharmaceutical sales. What do you do? I do death. It's a very long, quiet flight, The reality is, for me to meet most of the people that I do, really bad stuff has to happen. But the treasures of somebody coming to you and giving you their t-shirt or their coin or their helmet, and the handshake or hug that goes along with that, that's the family aspect. A plumber doesn't go on vacation to Florida and walk by another plumber's office and say, hey, I just want to stop in and say hi because I'm a plumber back home. And you walk in and say, hey, I'm a plumber in New York.
Yeah, what?
Yeah. What do you want? We do that in the fire service all the time, don't we? That's our home. We know that if there's something going on that we can't control, we go to a firehouse. That's the magic of this family. And so we've got to step it up even better than we've been doing to take care of our brothers and sisters and our family members, And we rush around helping everybody that we don't know. We will drop everything that we're doing at the drop of a hat. When one of brothers or sisters from the firehouse calls us and says, "Hey, Steve, I'm working on the shed on the house, and I need an extra set of hands. Can you come over and help me with the shed?" Don't worry about it's family day for you, Steve. Don't worry about you got a dinner in the oven. You say, "Hey, hon, I got to go help Joe put this roof on the shed." We also have to start focusing on the people at home. You know, we go to conferences, we go to seminars. I mean, you know, you go to FDIC, it's very humbling. You know, huge amounts of people, incredible, come from all over the world to learn, to practice a trade, become better at what we do, which is awesome. Awesome. But when was the last time anybody, including people listening, watching this podcast, when was the last time anybody who attends Fire Expo, Fire Rescue, Fire, you know, FDIC, whatever it may be, or any of the conferences or classes that we provide, go to, when was the last time any of them went to 2 days or 3 days on how to be a better spouse, how to be better at home? And I think we need to restart focusing some of that, you know, because ultimately there's going to be a day, career volunteer, when you say, "Hey, you know what? It's been a good ride. Time to kind of pull back a little bit." And then you got to think about family at home.
Yeah.
So I think we have to find that balance. And again, so that brings up the importance of having spouses and significant others involved in this peer support program.
Very
Peer
true.
for peer as closely as we can match that.
And, you know, one of the things I've been pushing probably for maybe the last year, and maybe it was part of the pandemic thinking, was the fact that we also have to include in that family our call takers and dispatchers. Because if we want to use the word first responders, they're it.
Yep.
They're there before we are.
Yep.
They take that call, they hear the caller screaming and yelling, and they try to calm them down. They get the details, pass it on to dispatch. And if you have ever listened to some dispatch, and you know, Chief Billy, thank goodness, gets a hold of a lot of this audio, as does Chief Abbott, Don Abbott, with the Mayday Project.
Yep.
And I'll tell you something. If you want something sobering, is listen to your first Mayday audio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but when you think of some of the calls that I can think back of, that I've national calls from, you know, I woke up from surgery to the Oklahoma City bombing. I was in the recovery room, and for a moment I sat up, and the nurse shoved me back down in bed. I just had back surgery. She goes, don't stop watching it. You're getting upset. I said, "Are there firefighters involved? Are there firefighters involved?" And she goes, "Well, I don't know. Probably, you know." I said, "Well, are they okay? Are they okay?" And then they had dispatch from that, and you listen to the dispatchers. And again, you know, I mean, you and I joke about it, but in Boston, and you know, our good mutual friend Todd LeDuc, I've listened to some of the Boston dispatches and FDNY dispatches in Philly. Both those three, I hear the most and listen to the most because they're near and dear to my heart. And I'm amazed at the composure. I'm just now listening to this weekend in Miami-Dade dispatch for the calls the ones that came in right at 1:38 in the morning. And between the dispatcher, the supervisor dispatch supervisor came on, they were getting the urgency out, but they did it in a calm manner. And so it was like dispatching you to a terrible call, but giving you your blankie to carry with you, because you had that voice carrying you to the destination and caring for you.
Well, you know, I started my career with FDNY Communications.
Oh,
I was a Bronx dispatcher.
Oh, wow.
And before I came up to Westchester, and you know, I worked the coastal storms in '92. I worked the first Trade Center bombing in '93. Some of the big riots in Washington Heights over in Manhattan. I mean, some incredible times, and it was rocking and rolling. And I had folks, again, old timers, right, 20 and 30 years, who were like cool as cucumber, you know, and it was an incredible experience, incredible people. You know, I had the opportunity to spend pretty much my last year. I found a niche with Training Academy when they first started training the firefighters as CFRs, first responders. And I got involved by accident with that program. And we talk about peer support. You know, it by accident, I think, came down to at one point I was one of the instructors. This is before the merger with EMS, so it was just the fire service, and I was one of the instructors that became a CLI, and I was doing skills, and we ran into some problems, and that became my niche, was working with the folks coming through who didn't want to do this. Now, I wasn't doing peer support CISM at the time. I really wasn't on the same level as them, but that became my niche, is kind of coaching through and talking to the people who really didn't want to do this, who were struggling with some of it. And it was a blessing. And that's where I think I caught my passion for, trying to help others. But the reality is that for me was just trying to get back. I was born different than most people. And so growing up in a hospital in Manhattan, at least one day a week for occupational therapy and physical therapy and prosthetics and you name it, I was surrounded by people who had incredible compassion, who had incredible empathy and love. And those are the touchy-feely words, because you talked about the F word, family. To me, well, there's another F word, which in the firehouse we're used to, right? That's one around the coffee pot Monday morning, right?
Exactly.
The other F word is feelings. Oh, we run and hide from that one. But that's what we're talking about. Because feelings, because people felt, because people cared, people helped me when I couldn't help myself, whether as a kid, as somebody who back in 1990 said, hey, it's time to get sober, somebody who went through how many high impact events. So I just try to get it back. That's the identification. So the badge doesn't have to be the same, but what's in here has to be the same, And that's, again, that goes back to the first part of the conversation. That's the fire service for me. Every now and then you'll run across somebody who, is better than, right? Or they don't want to, make time for you or whatever it is, because your uniform is different. That's fine. But overwhelmingly, it's the people who certainly I've encountered around this country who are just part of your family. Even if they're driving rigs that are not red.
Yep.
Even if the rigs don't have a queue, I have an issue with that. But
me too.
And even some of the funny helmets.
Even vehicles they call trucks that don't really bend in the middle.
Yeah, bendy truck things. It's on my bucket list. I want to drive the bendy truck, right?
Right.
But it's all the same stuff, because the reality is, at the end of the day, forget all the other stuff. Forget the bendy truck. Forget the engine versus truckie versus rescue versus ambulance, the helmets, smooth bore, straight tip. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, what happens is we have folks going out every single day helping people. And sometimes helping people hurts like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it's important that we help those who are helping, that we step up. And sometimes what I found in doing peer support is two things drive people to do peer support. Either I went through an event and there wasn't anything for me, and I paid the price, or I went through something and somebody helped me and I want to be able to give back. Neither one's right, neither one's wrong. But that's what we do. Our folks go out there every day and we help people in a manner that most people could not fathom. We see, smell, hear things most people could not fathom. We do it day after day. I would never take anything away from our service members. I grew up in an intercourse family. I've had the occasion to work with many of the special operations providers for our military branches. But the deployments that folks go on, very often, 3 months preparing, you're deployed for 3 or 6 or 9 or 12 months, depending on the area of operation. And then there's a 1 or 2 or 3 month re-entry period. In the fire service and public safety, our deployment lasts from the time we raise our hand and take that oath to the time we leave. We don't get that downtime. We don't get that. When you look at that intrinsic clock that we have, those people who are working 12 or 18 or 24 hour tours or more, realistically, it takes about 24 hours for your mind and body to start winding down. That's when we go on vacation. We're not really relaxed typically until about day 2 into that vacation. Then what happens is our internal mechanisms start saying, okay, we're leaving on Saturday, I'm back on duty on Sunday, around about Thursday afternoon, our body and mind start working together subconsciously, saying, wait a minute, now we're starting to ramp up again. Now we're getting ready to go back into that thing. And so it's really hard for us. And so all the more reason we need to reach out to folks. Reaching out works in both directions. I post about that all the time, right? Reaching out works in both directions. You know somebody who's struggling, who's going through whatever the event is, personal or professional. Reach out and say, hey, I got your back. If you're in need, just letting you know. But also those who are struggling with things. Don't let that bravado mess you up, right? Be proud of what you do. But don't let your pride hurt you. And it can.
Oh,
You know, as somebody who really had a very hard time reaching out, you know. But again, you know, it's like here in New York, we call them FAST teams. Everybody else, you know, the RIT team, the Rapid Intervention team. I know there have been occasions when somebody has transmitted a Mayday, when they were gotten out of the building or got out on their own accord very quickly. And if there wasn't perception-wise an immediate threat, well, maybe they break their chops a little bit afterwards. That's the friendly rousing. Listen, they're around to be roused, so that's okay. But the reality is most people won't fault somebody for transmitting a Mayday. You
Right.
transmit a Mayday when you think you're in trouble. The RIT team is there in case something goes bad. How's a peer support team any different? You know, we're there in case things are cruddy. And quite honestly, things get cruddy with us on the inside a whole lot more than they do on the fire ground as far as transmitting a Mayday.
You're an emotional RIT team.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And so the agencies that I love working with agencies to kind of get these things off the ground, not only design the team, but also figure out the funding and all that. And one of the challenges I have all the time is people say, well, we don't have the funding for that team. Okay, but you have the funding to train your RIT team and buy the special equipment that you need for that and to provide the overtime or whatever it may be, or for your volunteers who dedicate how many weekends and how many nights to go and get the training. But people say, well, you know, I don't want to attend a 3-hour overview on peer support and CISM, wellness, stress awareness, PTSD awareness. You know, we don't want the training. You know, one of the posts that I make on Twitter fairly often is, you know, how much did you spend maintaining your equipment last year? How much did you spend maintaining your personnel last year? Because quite honestly, without your personnel, I don't care if you're driving a bendy truck or, you know, a rescue or an engine or what kind of helmet you wear. It doesn't matter. Because without your personnel, that helmet sits idle on the gear rack. That rig is not moving. We got to do better.
You know, something you said a moment ago brought back to me something I kind of buried that I didn't want to admit, is that when I was up in upstate New York in my second apartment, and it didn't have the same friendliness that the first apartment did in North Carolina. I came into that department. I had certification from the state of North Carolina because the chief saw something in me and my buddy. We didn't know about this then. I only found out about it in 2016. But he sent us to 3 of the state fire colleges in those days. Basic firemanship, engineer and hydraulics, and then high-level rescue. Now, I'm a guy who suffered from acrophobia since I was 6 years old. But I went to that class, and I came off the parapet of a six-story building, and I rappelled down. And I was in the basket once, and I was carried the basket, and I did the rappelling. And I loved what I was doing. When I got into the New York department, I was like a nobody. Those certifications didn't mean anything. But I still loved doing what I did. And I was, you know, and people say, well, like chiefs have said to me, well, call me by my first name. I said, you're a chief. Me, I'm just a snot-nosed, belly-crawling nozzle jockey. That's all I got. Never got any bars. But 5 years ago, when I was up in North Carolina and I got to see the chief, who I hadn't seen in 35 years, since I moved out in 81. I didn't even know he was still alive till my buddy, who I'm still close friends with, who was our mentor at that fire department. He was one of the day guys. And he said, have you seen the chief? I said, seen the chief? Is he still alive? He said, yeah. Go see him. He's still in the same house. And went over there, and we had a great reunion, and invited me in and see his wife, and we're drinking iced tea. He says, Stephen, I bet you wonder why I kept sending you Richard and Roger to the fire college. I said, yeah, Rich and I talk about almost every phone call. What the hell was he thinking? They're sending we were two new guys. We were rookies. And I had said to them when they first told us, I said, you got all these other firefighters. I'm only in here 6 months. Why would you want to send me? He said, because I saw you boys as being officers in this department. I knew I saw the dedication. You were married, you worked a full-time job, you worked almost 80 hours a week, and you still maintain in the top 10 responses to the fire calls. You were always here for extra time for training. You want to learn more. Because I walked in there knowing how to use hand tools. That was it. That was it. I could use screwdriver, hammer, never changed my oil. Of course, I got a baptism when my buddy showed me how to change my oil, and he forgot to tell me to move my face out of the way when I took the nut out. But that's okay. That was part of the fun.
Yeah.
But when I injured out, or disabled out, whatever you want to call it, and even though they had mentioned that they're going to try to find another place for me because my knee was so bad at that point, and my back hadn't even started, but the back was due to an injury that happened at the first fire school in North Carolina, we've determined. And I was heartbroken. How do I stop doing what I love doing? Why do I have to stop? Because I'll put a brace on. No, you can't do it. It's beyond that point, Steve.
Yeah.
And finally, they were able to appoint me, if I was interested, as an inspector for the village, and took some classes and did the basic inspection. So he kept me connected. But then we wound up relocating to South Florida for the first time. And there was nothing volunteer we were down in Hollywood. So I would listen to the scanner, and that was about it. But I knew deep inside I wasn't fulfilled. I had lost part of me when I disabled out. And I think we have to remember that when our members either retire out or disable out, that is an emotional event.
Sure it is.
For, I would say, more than 90% of them.
Yeah.
Of us, because I'm one of them. And I've buried that deep for a long, long time. I haven't really talked about that. And and on top of that, what happened at the same time was I lost my dad. And I had left the synagogue business. We had started a video store. My brother and I had opened up 2 shops we bought 5 franchises, one in Syracuse and one in Boston. We're looking to open more. And our dad was so proud because he said, I never took a chance. I'm so proud of you boys. And I said, Dad, what if it fails? He goes, hey, remember I told you about looking in the mirror? If you can look in the mirror and you say you did the very best you could to make that store succeed and it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Lock the door and walk away with your head held high. And then he was gone before we even opened it. I was a mess. I was a bloody mess. And I had one daughter who was 2.5. I had a new infant who had just been born. And I was a mean son of a bitch. I spent as much time as I could away from the house, at the firehouse, and in my store. I needed help. And I didn't reach out for it until my wife gave me the ultimatum, as they call it.
Yeah.
She said, you either, and I wasn't drinking, I wasn't using drugs, but I was just a mean son of a bitch. Mm-hmm. And she said, you have babies who love you and care for you, and I can love and care for you, but I can't deal with them and you in this mess. You got to get yourself shaped up. I turned against religion. How could God take my dad from me at this moment when this was an edge that was going to make him so proud, this tipping point for him? And I finally found somebody I could talk to, another firefighter. Yep. And we're still dear friends today. And it's just, we have to remember that, we can look at the senior person in the firehouse as a wealth of knowledge, but you also have to look at them that they know their time left is limited. Yep. Or we know a good friend, early 30s, mid 30s, who disables out because of an injury on the job. Yep. Okay, well, he's got his disability. He's not all set, or she's not all set. Or somebody disables out because of cancer. This is the black curtain hanging over the fire service today. Yeah. And you can't just say they'll be okay because you threw them a little farewell party. Right. You can't say that. It's not going to happen. Believe me. Right. Having been through it myself, it's not says something that, okay, I guess I'm not a firefighter anymore. That's life. Let's go on, honey.
Yeah.
You
So
might try to do it that way.
Yeah.
But I'll guarantee you it's going to come. If you have the same
Absolutely.
passion, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass.
yeah, absolutely. You know, in the
Oh, I haven't talked about that.
roundabout late '89, I was introduced to somebody who was a firefighter in the South Bronx. And it was a mutual friend who introduced us, and this is somebody who had been sober for quite a while, and I was still in the throes. I was still in the middle of it, and now and then I guess I was testing the waters, and I would ask him, hey, should I be doing what you're doing? He found people who were in his same boat, who supported each other and helped each other, get sober. And he said, listen, I don't know. That's for you to decide. I don't know. But he spoke the same language I did. I wasn't hired on at that point, but I certainly had been with the volunteers, and I had that passion, I had that love, and he always treated me like an equal. Here was a guy in a busy house in the South Bronx, and he was just a great guy, and he never preached to me. He never talked down to me, but he always said, if the drinking becomes an issue, or you want some help, you let me know. And he's the person that helped me get sober. And so when I got sober back in 1990, there was an old timer who was nearby, who had been sober for many years. He had 20 plus years of sobriety, and he was a retired chief of department from a good sized department. And so he had everything that I wanted, man. He was like, oh my gosh, 40 years in the fire service, retired chief of department, sober many years. And we became close. We became, we pal around together, and just a great guy. And big guy, big tall guy, and of size, and came to me a month before my 1 year anniversary in sobriety, which is a big milestone, And he came to me a month before, and he gave me a card. And I said, wow, Bill, thank you. I said, but I celebrate like next month, and he had cancer. And he says, yeah, I know you're celebrating next month. He goes, but I don't know if I'm going to make it. I want you to have this. And even with the cancer, he was a big dude. And he put his hands on my shoulders, and he said, I need you to make me a promise. He said, I know you're trying to get hired on. He goes, no, I don't know if that's going to happen. He says, you've got more working against you than most. He says, but I need you to make me a promise now that if a door opens for you in the fire service, I don't know if it's fire education, fire prevention, communications, whatever it may be, you've got to take it. You've got to go through that door. He says, because you have something inside of you. And I don't know what it is. I can't identify. I can't. He says, but you've got something that you're going to bring to the fire service that's unique, that not a lot of people are going to have. So you make me that promise that door opens, you're going to go. Now, what do you say at that point? You're trying to fight back tear. I'm a crier, right? I'm an emotional guy. You're trying to fight back the tear. And of course, you're going to tell him, absolutely. And what he gave me was, in that card was a medallion that his parents gave him when he started the fire academy 40 years before. He died 2 weeks later. And a year later, I went on New York City Fire Department. And June 22nd, 97, I lost my lieutenant in the line of duty. That medallion was glued on the inside of my helmet during that fire. Now, there's no way that Bill could have known this, and certainly no way that I knew this at the time, but I think that thing that he was talking about that he said was unique, that he saw, was this peer support CISM stuff. Because when I got involved in this back in 95, believe me, there were a lot of agencies, a lot of people who said, no, we don't. It was almost like an anonymous fellowship. Like, agency A, it's like having a debriefing tonight. And like, everybody knew you went through an event. Nobody really cares that you're getting help. But back then it was a whole different story. I mean, the opposition we had was incredible. But that's, I think, what he was talking about. what I do isn't unique. There are thousands of peer support providers just in this country alone. I wish there weren't. I wish there weren't. I wish there wasn't a need. I wish there wasn't a need for Miami-Dade's team to be in place doing their thing right now.
Right.
But I thank God that they are. Because without people who say, I've been hurt, or I know you're hurting, or I know you're going through a challenge, maybe I can help out a little bit. Maybe I can reduce some of that stress. Without that, then we're losing more people. And whether it's quickly or whether it's prolonged, whether it's those people that we know that have died on the job, or those that know that have died because of the job. And so, part of what I do is for my buddy Bill, because he said, "Man, you gotta go through that door,"
Yeah.
I thank God that I'm in a position to be able to do it, and all I want to be able to do is help one person. Listen, I'm looking to retire in a year or two, and at the end of the day, and I'll always do peer support. My phone is always on, but at the end of the day, I just want to know that we help one person. And that's, so with you, maybe you're not doing the same stuff physically that you were doing 30, 40 years ago. Brother, don't mistake for a second that you're not helping people. You're helping people every day. You're doing your thing, whether you're doing the podcast, whether you're online, whether you're helping people in your synagogue. Just by you showing up for life one day at a time on life's terms and being who you are, man, that's the magic. That's the help that we need to give to people. Make ourselves available for other people. And that's what we do. That's the cool stuff.
Yeah.
And these chiefs, these names that you and I are throwing around that are the big names of the fire service. First off, they're no different than the 37 firefighters we have in the academy right now. They're no different, right? And they'll tell you the same thing. But they're all people, whether it's the recruits we have in the academy now, or these folks who have 50 years in the fire service that are the big names that we recognize. They're all putting themselves out there to help other people.
Yeah.
And in peer support, it's no different. It's just that we're helping the people who do what we do.
I'll share a cute story about that. Chief Rubin was one of my first guests, and he's been a great supporter of the podcast, been on several times. And we're just become friends that have never met,
Yeah.
I have a lot of them thanks to social media.
Yeah.
And he said, it was right after Wing Spread 6 had taken place. And he says, would you like to help break the news? We're going to release the news on Spring 6. I'd like to do it on the show. I said, oh, that'd be great. We could do that. He goes, I'm going to bring Chief Bruno on. I said, no, I can't do that. He said, what? I said, no, I wouldn't be able to talk with Chief Bruno. He says, why? I said, because he's Chief Bruno. He says, what do you mean he's Chief Bruno? I said, he's Chief Alan Brunoncini. I was learning from him when he first started writing for Firehouse in the 70s.
Yeah.
He's like God of fire. I mean, you have Thor and you have Mars and Vulcan and you have Brunoncini.
Yeah.
Look, he's just another firefighter. I'll tell you what I'll do. He says, you call me and then I'll connect him in. How's that? And I said, okay. I said, I just don't know. You may have to carry he says, just wait, Steve. So I called him up and he says, okay, I'm going to make the call. And Chief Bruno, may rest in peace, comes online and he says, hey, Dan, how you doing? Rubes. And he says, Chief, I want you to meet my good friend, Steve Green from 5 Alarm Task Force. And he's the host of the podcast. He goes, hey, Steve, how they hanging? And I said, hi, Chief. And that was it. As Chief Rubin said, it's just going to be like talking at the kitchen fire table, at the kitchen, the kitchen table in the firehouse. Yeah. And that's what families do. Exactly.
Nobody's better than anybody else. There are some who think they are.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but those big names, those people that we've gotten to know, again, no different than the recruits we have now. That's all family, man. I'll tell you what, I'll sit down for a cup of coffee with anybody in this family at any time. As I tell people, I'm a cheap date. Find me a cup of coffee. You got me for an hour or 2 or 3, man. Keep filling it up. Let's keep talking. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we help each other.
Right.
The more we establish rapport, the more we're able to help people when crummy stuff's happening.
Yeah.
So it's all about the family. Lasky will talk about, pride and ownership. Ruben talks about, it's all about leadership. To me, it's all about family. It's all about helping people. That's what we all do. That's what we all do.
Captain Jim Moss just released his book, Firefighter Success Book.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and the Cap's been on with Chief Kerrigan,
Yep.
several times,
Yeah.
about fitness and everything, because that's been so important to us at the podcast. And Jim always has brought in that concept of family, not just the fire family, but our family is part of the fire family.
Yeah.
I remember in our two, at least in the Department of North Carolina, our families were part of the fire service. We're part of us. Always family events. Our buddy, who's one of the three caretakers who became our mentor, they had a baby the first Christmas that we were there in '77. And, to see her grow over these years and get married and be a mother, and then their young son we used to play with on the fire trucks and had to chase him off and get him. And family was part of it. I mean, we had picnics together, we had fundraisers together, and it was such a warm feeling that our families were part of who we are, and we were part of our families, plural.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not just plural, our fire family and our personal family, but all the fire department families were part of a family group.
Well, I became that guy. I became that guy who, there's a million excuses, but no real reasons. I became, not that I'm thin now by any stretch, but I became very, very heavy, very unhealthy. And, I started about 8 months ago, really changing everything. And I've lost a lot of weight. I'm down 4 uniform sizes, almost 5 uniform sizes.
That's wonderful.
But I beat FDIC with Jim Moss and Dan Kerrigan. And, these are the fitness guys. I mean, these guys are, but more so they're sweethearts, because I'd be at a table with them and, I'm not the picture of fitness. These guys are fitness. They never talk down to me. They never preach to me. They never, what they are? They're family.
Yeah.
And I've reached out to them over the past few months of my journey here and there and said, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm doing. And they have been nothing but encouraging. That is peer support. That is, dead pure. That is what we do. Exactly. So it doesn't have to be just the critical incident stress management stuff. It has been saying, what? We may look differently. We may act. Listen, I don't care what somebody looks like, what they believe in, I believe in 3 types of people, pure and simple. Those that help people, those that hurt people, or those that are neutral. And the reality is, the people that are neutral are probably leaning towards the side of hurting people, because how can you be neutral when people need help and you don't lend help? But that is what it is. And so in the fire service, we'll look different, and some of us are in bendy trucks and etc. But we're all the same. We're just folks who raise our hand and say, I'll go help folks when they need it, because somebody's got to, And I'm blessed. I've got to make my living for almost the past 30 years now in the fire service. As I tell people, man, it beats working for a living. It's great.
It's that old phrase, right?
I work with amazing people. When I'm traveling the country, teaching, consulting, speaking, whatever, it's family. But the reality is this: anybody who teaches on the road will tell you it's not nearly as glamorous as they make it up to be. Right? You're in an airplane, which I hate. You're in a hotel room in a classroom. Not a whole lot glamorous about that. What's glamorous about that is the family, that 20 or 30 or 400 people that you get to meet when you're doing this, because your family grows every single time. And it's people that are coming to those seminars, conferences, classes, who want to help people. Where else do you find that? That's the fire service. That's helping it's unlike anything. It's unlike anything else. I don't want to leave it, and I'll never get out completely. I want to get back on the road. That's what I've missed. That's what I missed with this whole pandemic.
Sure.
Sure. is I've missed being with the family on the road. Now, I can tell you, coming through September 11th and having lost 18 friends that morning, I always said nothing would ever be worse than September 11th. This pandemic was. Operationally and otherwise, this pandemic was. And, you know, comparing apples to oranges maybe, but this was terrible. And, you know, as far as peer support, we had folks reaching out, not one or two a day, but, you know, when things were hot and heavy, March, April, May, June of last year, a light day was when two people would call and say, I just have to vent, I have to talk. Most days it was 4, 6, 8 people every day. And everybody said the same thing. I don't want to go to work anymore because everybody's dying. Certainly that was the case here in New York.
Yeah, sure.
And so, you know, the problem is the same people that are crawling the pile now in South Florida also went through this pandemic. Also have put in 4 or 6 or 30 years of some horrible stuff. Hey, listen, I don't know if any of us have ever gotten a call on Thanksgiving morning or Christmas morning or whatever holiday and say, hey, can the fire department come over? Yeah, what's the problem? Oh, there's no problem. It's just that my kids are getting ready to open their presents and I want the local firehouse to be here to experience their joy. That typically doesn't happen.
Right.
We get called when the kid doesn't wake up on Christmas morning or whatever it may be. And so the people who were incredible in this past 15, 16 months are now handling horrible events in South Florida, are handling horrible events every single day around this country, around the world.
Yep.
Our neighbors in Canada are no different than us. And that's what's amazing is we keep showing up to do it. We keep giving to other people, which is awesome. Let's give to our own sometimes. Let's support our own a little bit better.
Right.
Let's butt in where maybe it's none of our business and say, I'm worried about you. Let's talk. That's what family does. You can disagree at times.
Right. Exactly. We disagree, but we sometimes we have to agree to disagree to keep the piece of the house, as they call it.
Yeah.
And but you need to know that if you ready to reach out to someone to help them, you're doing it out of love and concern. You're not doing it to be a busybody.
Yeah.
You're doing it out of love and concern because that's one of your pals from the firehouse. You've seen some changes going through him or her that just, you know, you've known him a few years and you've never seen this kind of behavior before. What are you okay? What's going on? You're not crossing the line, you know, because like I said at the very beginning, if we're going to use the F word, then we have to embrace everything that the word family means. You know, I'll never forget the synagogue in Syracuse sent me down to a conference on fundraising in the city, in New York City. Nice hotel. The best part of the hotel was around the corner from a firehouse in Manhattan. So I went to the first day and I come up with something that was not going to work for the synagogue, but I figured it could work for the volunteer firehouse. That was that. And then I looked at the agenda for the next day and there was nothing that was going to have anything to do with the synagogue fundraising. So I didn't wear a suit and tie that day and I just wore a pair of jeans and a shirt and I walked around the corner. I knocked on the door and I had my badge with me and hey, come on in. And they were finishing breakfast and they sat me down. We were chatting and there was a rescue company there. I think a rescue company. And they got out the bell and they said, you want to ride? And I said, can I? He goes, come on, you're a firefighter. Let's go. And it wasn't a big call, but it made my day. It made my trip to New York because I was with a team of the people that I admired most, you know, and it meant so much to me that I said, listen, I can't be for dinner, but I want to do the buy-in. He goes, no. You can't be. I said, no, I got to be back for something, but I want to do the buy-in just to thank you. You don't have to thank us. You're just you're a firefighter, you know, anytime you're here, just come on in.
Yeah. Well, we talk about random acts of kindness, don't we?
Yeah.
You know, I was raised in the fire service that when you're in the firehouse, I mean, short of weather, etc., whenever possible, the bay door should be open. What does that say? It says we're open for business. And so the kid that shows up at the firehouse who says, hey, my bicycle tire is flat. That's part of what we do. How many times do parents stop by and say, hey, can my 3-year-old, can my 5-year-old take a look at the fire rings? What is your answer? Your answer every time has to be yes.
Right.
That's what we do. So it's because you don't know that one act of kindness, that person could be a chief of department 40 years from now,
Oh yeah.
So it's also, there was a battalion chief that I worked for when I was out at the academy in New York City, and he had a sign above his desk. And he said, the forehead you step on today is attached to the butt you have to kiss tomorrow.
Right.
So never forget where you came from, but, as the chief used to say, be nice. Doesn't cost anything. It takes a whole lot of effort. Be nice. I've got that sticker on my helmet.
That's a great sticker to have there. That
Yeah.
really is. Because, we're compassionate when we answer a call.
Yeah.
We take care of the family, the people that were involved in this call. We're nice to them. To do that, we have to be nice to our own as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to be nice to ourselves,
Exactly.
and that's, sometimes we have a hard time with that, but, I think it's important because I don't know. I think we get one go around and, enjoy it. Reach out that hand.
Right.
Again, I go back to my challenge coins behind me. I mean, the handshakes and hugs that go with those. And that's the goal, man. That's the goal. The relationships you form with people along the way, the people who do what we do. We all have the stories, right? About the big one, burnt down the block. It's all great stuff, man. Tell me about, without particulars, but tell me about the time that a firefighter came to you at 3:00 in the morning and said, hey, I need some help. And that you spoke with them for 2 or 3 hours. And at the end of that, they were in a better place. That's the heroics, man. That's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. It takes a lot of courage to do what's not popular. And,
Oh yes.
we're getting a whole lot better with this stuff, but there are still people who don't know how to do it.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, Chief, I can't thank you enough. Before we close, I'm just going to share something on the positive side, which is really connected to what we're talking about, and that is doing good things for our own people. And as I mentioned earlier, before we were, recording, is that we started this nonprofit 5 Alarm Task Force Corp last year in the midst of the pandemic, and there's only one goal for our foundation. First of all, the motto of our company is one family, one mission, first responders helping each other, and that's our motto. And our mission for our foundation is to assist our brothers and sisters, hopefully, if we grow big enough, in all areas of public safety. But right now, our brothers and sisters in the fire service and or their families in dire need. That's where every penny of our foundation goes. We've been lucky enough, well, I shouldn't say lucky, but we've been able to disperse nearly $2,000 since last October. A lot of that was raised at our May Day webinar. We'll be having, as I mentioned, we'll be having our webinar at the end of August on looking forward into the future, dealing with PFOS and PFAS. And we have some great presenters there, some of the biggest names on this topic there. And as I also mentioned that recently, my wife and I were blessed with our first grandchild. And people would keep asking me, do I think, will he be a firefighter? And I said, I don't know. I can't tell you what he's going to be, but I can tell you that as long as I'm around, he will know who we are and what we do. And so this is one of our new shirts we have brought in. This is my grandson Ami. This is his nickname. His real name is Amiel Hudson, and middle name is Hudson. And the people who make our shirts for us in Chicago, we can logo it. Sent me this as a surprise with our order. And what we're doing right now, if you'd like one of our t-shirts, and right now they're not in the store, but if you'd like one of our t-shirts, we have them in army green, dark blue, and the black. Our motto is on the back with our logo on the front, as you see. I don't know about Ami where he's going to be in 20 years from now, but he's going to know about firefighters. He's going to know about fishing. And if you'd like one of those, if you go to our website at www.5-alarm-taskforce-corp.org and scroll down the homepage, you'll see our picture of the Q, a beautiful federal shiny Q. Click on that picture, our donation page will pop up. And for a donation of $50, you will receive a t-shirt of your choice, color and size, medium, large, and extra large, for you. And the shipping is free as well. So just know the reason why we're pushing that here is because we want you to know where that money is going to go. That money is not going to help me clean this office that I'm in, because what you see behind you is just a phony background. This office is a disaster zone, and I think I might need the team from Broward and Miami-Dade to help me get this room. But we want you to know that every penny from our foundation goes to help our brothers and sisters and or their families. That's what's important. If you look at the last at least 5 line of duty deaths that have come out since before last week, we have donated to the families, and we're waiting pending one more, the one in Los Angeles County where the firefighter was shot. We're making the connection. Some people have asked, well, why don't you use GoFundMe? Well, because GoFundMe charges these fees, and if we're going to pay extra money, I'd rather give that money directly to the family.
Yeah.
So we write a check from our foundation account and mail it to either the contact, the PIO, the chief of the department, stuff like that. So folks, if you're watching and if you're listening, please visit our website. Right now you can get the t-shirt at no charge for that kind of we know not everybody can make it. You can make a $1 donation though. Make a $5 donation and $10. Those help us a great deal. We've had a bunch of those come in over the past few months, and those are wonderful. So don't think that, oh, I don't have $50 to give, I shouldn't give anything. Give us $1. Give us $5. We'll be happy because you'll know where it's going. That's going to help one of our brothers and sisters. Chief, I can't thank you enough. And I'm going to tell you right now, I just put you on the list for next season. I got to have you back. I think we maybe dipped the toe into the waters, but I need to get up to my knees or up to my hips, because this is so important to me. I've been looking, like I said, we've had a few other speakers on. We've kind of tiptoed around it. We've never delved into it like we started to today. And there's a lot deeper for us to go. So I'll shoot you an email, and in the invite, you let me know what's going to be good for your season. We start up again in mid-August and go right through June of 2022. So there'll be awesome time. And really, it was not only was it eye-opening for me, it was cathartic for me. You let me bring up a very troubling time in my life. And like I said, I haven't spoken about it in a long time. So I hope that some of our listeners, some of our viewers will find at least maybe the start of that same catharsis for them. Maybe, you know what? Maybe it isn't so bad if I reach out and ask somebody to help. Yeah. And you can ask a buddy in the firehouse. You can ask a line officer. You can ask a chief officer. You can go to the chief of department. You can go to your priest, your minister, your rabbi, your imam, whoever you have that faith and trust in. Go to them and say, can I talk? I need to talk with somebody. You take that first step. And that's the start of, hopefully, God willing, a new direction and a better direction for you. Yes. So let's get ready for the session number 2 sometime in the next 8 to 10 months. And we'll continue to educate our listeners and our viewers of how important CISM peer support is. And it doesn't have to be convoluted or complicated. It can just be, are you okay? Yeah. To start the conversation. Yep. Again, my thanks to Chief Paul Giacomo. It was worth the wait, and I can't wait to have him back. And I hope that for all of you listening and watching today, this has been a meaningful podcast. I hope my listeners and viewers take something away from every podcast. But this one digs a little deep. This isn't tactics. This isn't arguing aggressive firefighting, passive firefighting, which not. This is about who we are. How do we do this job? Because we have this makeup. We have this gene, this piece of our personality that says, as you said it best, I want to help somebody. And we all find ways to help people. Doctors, nurses, therapists, physical therapists, police, EMS. We all do this for a reason. This is not like walking into a bank applying for a job. It's not like going to school to be an accountant and applying for a job. This is something totally different because this takes your mind, your body, your family, and wraps it into one package. That you're going to, all those have to come together every day of your life in the business. And it requires us to be at our best all the time because we're one step off our best. This is not the business where we can afford to be one step off our best.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, Chief, thank you so very much. I wish you much success, especially at FDIC coming up. I wish I could be there. I had actually started filling out the thing for 2022, but with my health, I just couldn't take the chance that they were going to say yes. And then I wasn't going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be fair to somebody else. But, my class is available. I am a certified Florida fire instructor. How that happened was a fluke in itself, but I'm glad to teach a little bit about peer support in our class, The Elephant in the Firehouse, and just so happy to have one of the best in our country to talk about it with us and share with us today. So thank you again, Chief.
I appreciate it. It was an honor.
Godspeed.
Thank you very much, brother.
Be safe and be well, and we'll be back. We'll be back together in not too distant future.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Folks, if you're watching the video, this will conclude the video, except for the credits. But if you're listening to the audio, we'll be right back right after these words. Thank you for tuning in, either way, audio or video, and we'll be back again. Stay safe and stay well. We'll be right back if you're listening to the audio.